USCHO.com. This is the USCHO Spotlight, a weekly podcast from U.S. College Hockey Online at USCHO.com, featuring conversations with college hockey coaches and players and journalists who cover the sport.
Welcome to USCHO Spotlight for Wednesday, March 9th, 2022. I'm Ed Trefzger alongside Jim Connelly. This episode is brought to you by DCU Digital Federal Credit Union. What will DCU mean to you? Find out today by visiting dcu.org. Membership required. 4 conferences in Division I had first-round playoffs last weekend, and only 3 road teams won the series. One of them was the Bentley Falcons.
And joining us now on USCHO Spotlight, the head coach of Bentley, and that is Ryan Soderquist. And Ryan, hey, first rounds are not easy to get through in any conference tournament. 2-game road sweep of Niagara last week. What did you like about what happened with your team last week?
Jim, first of all, thanks for having me on, Jim and Ed. I really liked our resilience. We were coming off a pretty tough month. Guys continue to stick with it, practice hard. We had a good week of preparing, heading into Niagara. Most importantly, I think up there on the road is, we bonded together. We played road hockey and we played 60 minutes each night. And I thought that was the biggest change from the last month is we had the ability to go in and play 60 minutes of a complete game both nights.
You mentioned about changing, and I had seen you the weekend before against Holy Cross. And the one thing that I noticed was that your team creates a lot of offense, but it's the finish that is one of the big parts of, what every team needs to do. How much did you feel in scoring 7 goals against Niagara this weekend? Did your team finish?
Yeah, obviously it's extremely important. And, you were at the Holy Cross series the weekend before, and that was, just a weekend that I thought we played good hockey and it didn't finish. And we had a month of that. And I've been in the business now for almost 20 years. And, that was a tough stretch of not scoring goals, and we were playing good hockey, but just not finishing. Like you said, creating a lot of scoring opportunities, but not putting the puck in the back of the net. So to head up to Niagara, I actually think it was a good situation, as funny as this sounds, to be on the road for that first round game. I think we just needed to put the last couple of weeks behind us, get on the bus with the boys and go out and just play some road hockey. And I think by just focusing on road hockey and not so much about finishing and scoring goals, we were actually able to just put some pucks in the back of the net by just working hard. And then through the course of the weekend, we started building our confidence. And I think our confidence level, even from Friday to Saturday, I saw a big jump on the bench and our mentality in our locker room.
What does that change? The road versus home. I know we've talked to Mel Pearson in Michigan, who's mentioned road is sometimes easier. Norm Bazin Lowell has talked about how sometimes home there can be some, distractions with girlfriends and tickets and all that sort of stuff and family coming to town.
Yes.
I mean, what's the difference between the road and having a home game?
Sometimes it's just, getting in the hotel with the guys, and that is your complete focus. You're coming down to pregame meal at 2:30 together. You're jumping on the bus. You're there for the weekend. You're in an environment where, you have to just stick together and play hard. You kind of playing that underdog role where you're on the road and, hey boys, just stick together. And sometimes I just think it takes off the individual pressure. You're there as a team, just trying to bond together and win a game. Like you said, versus, sometimes maybe being in your home building and you got a big crowd and you're 2 periods in and you're sitting there going, geez, we can't put the puck in the net. We got a nice big crowd tonight and we can't get them into the game because we can't score. And then maybe sometimes you start overanalyzing the game a bit versus just simplifying and playing hard like you do on the road.
I want to talk about a couple of players. Defenseman Drew Bavaro leads your team in scoring 9 goals, 27 points. And then Cole Kotze, 31 games played, but 10 goals and 23 points. Both of those players, what do they add to your offense?
Yeah, they've both done a really nice job. Both in the sophomore class took really big jumps from last year. Drew is, obviously a very solid defenseman, good sized kid that can really rip the puck. He sees the ice well. He's obviously helped us from the back end. And then Cole Codsey is a guy that has had a big jump since last year. I think he came into the year from last year with 1 or 2 goals, and now he has 10 this year. But he gets what he earns. Everything that he puts into it. He's one of those first on the ice, last off the ice guys. He's a program guy. To see him have success this year is something really nice to see. There's nothing better to see a guy that puts the effort and the time in get rewarded for their hard work.
Ryan, I've seen your team in person and, of course, on video during the season, and definitely a skilled and talented team. And during that stretch where you had difficulty, there were just so many close games for Bentley during that stretch. How did you, as the coaching staff, how did your captains work to kind of keep the attitude up and keep the positivity going?
Yeah, and obviously that's important. Your internal leadership and your captains and that leadership group has to be strong, and they were. I use the word resilient. I think on Sundays, I was nervous too, how the guy's going to show up. We're going to make sure they're ready to go. And, you walk in the door and you talk to your upperclassmen, or we have conversations on Sundays with the captains, and they say, "Hey, coach, we're ready to go. We have good buy-in, and we know we're just not putting pucks in the net." So, to kind of have that upper class leadership, to be able to calm the locker room through a stretch like that is extremely important. Because obviously you as a coach can continue to walk in there and, try to say all the right things. But at the end of the day, it comes down to the players and supporting each other. And our upper class leadership led by Ethan Roswell, one of our captains, has done a phenomenal job. And they deserve a tremendous amount of credit for, sticking with it and taking care of business last weekend.
When you got out on the ice for practice after a tough weekend, how were those practices? Did the guys leave that behind them and get ready for the next week?
Yeah, they absolutely have. I actually think that's kind of a trend right now. It does seem in the last few years that players have the ability to kind of put the weekend behind them and be looking forward to the next weekend. And like I said, I think our guys did a really good job with that. And we had a very strong first half too. So we were continuously talking about that and, watching some clips and films of the things we were doing well in the first half and the goal scoring and the ability to score. And, so it's a bit easier to stay focused when you're saying, hey, we've been there, we've done it, we've had success. So it wasn't like we were a team that didn't have any success in the first half and you were still trying to find it for the first time. We just were trying to get our game back. So we just kept trying to draw off the experiences from the first half of the year and individually get everybody back to where they need to get to.
Coaches around the league talk about how tight the league is talent-wise, top to bottom. You played a Holy Cross team that finished 10th that ended up being a pretty good team this year. And you spent a lot of the season at or near the top of the league. It's possible, and I think I heard a quote from Eric Lang about this. It's possible that AIC, even though they're the top seed, may have drawn the toughest opponent in this quarterfinal round. I mean, do you see yourselves as a team that really is one of those top teams and not one that kind of fell off near the bottom?
I have a great deal of confidence in our group, from our goaltending to our defense to our forwards. I think we're a very well-rounded group. We're a very close-knit group with a very strong culture. So I feel very good about our team heading into the playoff series. You just mentioned, the parity in the league. It is extremely close. And, Holy Cross was a very strong team this year. Billy Reed did a great job with them in his first year. And just even looking at his box scores from this past weekend, it looked like they put on a very strong performance in 2 games out in Mercyhurst, but just couldn't find the back of the net. So, obviously coming into the series, I don't think this has anything to do with, Bentley versus AIC or Canisius versus Mercyhurst. I think just obviously whoever's going to be playing the best hockey down the stretch is going to have an opportunity to win. And I expect these games in the quarterfinals to probably pretty much be close to 1-goal games. And I would be very surprised not to see at least a few of these series go to game 3. I just think the parity in the league is that close.
You mentioned goaltenders. Both Evan DeBrouwer and Nicholas Grabko have had a lot of time in net for you this season. DeBrouwer had a really good weekend at Niagara. What does that combination of goaltenders, what does that give you as a coach to have 2 guys who can step up like that?
Well, it gives obviously the coaching staff, and more importantly, gives the locker room a great deal of confidence. On a daily basis, both of those guys are out there competing. It's not just the games; it's also what we see on a daily basis. We had a really strong practice today, and I think Nicky Grabko was amazing out there today in terms of his effort and second effort saving pucks. It brought a ton of energy to the team, and obviously coming off the weekend, Evan had a great series out in Niagara, and I thought he did a very good job of managing the game out there. And, we expect the same out of him heading into the weekend. But, there's nothing better to have depth in goaltending position, and we have that.
More with Ryan Soderquist in a moment. This podcast is brought to you by DCU Digital Federal Credit Union. Visit dcu.org.
This is the USCHO Spotlight, a weekly podcast from US College Hockey Online.
Know how people say life happens? Well, for me, life was happening, and I needed a new truck. I didn't have time to shop around for a good loan, so I got one from the dealer, higher interest and all. Month after month, those payments were squeezing me. So I went to DCU. They refinanced my loan and helped lower my rate, which lowered my payments. These days, I have more money in my pocket for whatever life throws at me. What will DCU mean to you? Insured by NCUA. Membership required. Visit dcu.org.
We're back now with Bentley head coach Ryan Soderquist. Over the course of the season, just 2 of your players appeared in all of your games. Have you had to manage injuries or illness, or is it just a matter of juggling the lineup?
Yeah, we've probably had all three. Early on, it was a little bit different, obviously, with the transfer portal and fifth-year guys and getting, guys kind of one and done fifth-year guys into the program and trying to see where they would fit. So, kind of in October, we did do a little bit of a shuffling through the lines, probably a little bit more than we'd like to try to see where guys would fit in. And then we did get a bit of the injury bug, as we actually still do have now. And that stretch there coming back from break, we did get a bit with the COVID situation. We lost 22 players over a 3-week period of time returning from break with COVID. And, obviously I think that it was, we were one of 2 schools that were testing on a weekly basis. And that did, bit us in the butt a little bit there, but we were able to come out on the other side of that.
When it was announced that you would be playing this series this weekend at Olympia Ice Center instead of Mass Mutual Center because of a scheduling conflict, it kind of made me a little nostalgic for the old days of Atlantic hockey, but nostalgic in the sense of how all the individual teams have been doing some really heavy lifting to move the league forward. I mean, when you think back at your days at the Jar and, Milford Ice Pavilion for Sacred Heart and that era 10, 15 years ago and where the league has come since then, I mean, it really is pretty drastic and dramatic when you look at it.
Yeah, it's been a huge change. And, obviously kudos to all the programs in our league for continuing to press forward and seeing the facility changes like that we have on our campus at Bentley, and obviously RIT and Sacred Heart building their new facility now. And it's great to see. And obviously AIC moving into the Mass Mutual Center and playing their games there. So there's been a big change in facilities, and, heading into Olympia this weekend, obviously it's a sheet of ice. It's 200 by 85. There'll be 2 nets. There's glass. It'll be a little bit colder probably than the Mass Mutual Center, but our guys are just excited to still be playing hockey. And obviously personally as a program, we spent 30 years in the Jar in a cold municipal rink, so it doesn't scare us at all to head down to Olympia.
I remember the aluminum bleachers at Olympia. So yeah, it's a little cold in there. I want to ask you one more question before I turn it over to Jim, and that's about the league having its championship this year at Adirondack Bank Center in Utica, a really neat arena, a town that loves hockey. What are your thoughts on having the championship at what seems to be about as central a location as the league could find?
Yeah, it's, obviously it's a change from being in Buffalo, and, we're in Rochester than Buffalo. So I think it's obviously a great opportunity to test the market in Utica and see how The response is there. Obviously, their program draws quite a bit, and I actually just saw their game that they hosted the other night was close to a sellout. So hopefully we have the ability to capture some of their fans in the Utica area and get out to see some really good Division I ice hockey in the Atlantic Hockey League. So excited for that opportunity, and obviously just at this point in time, just excited to try to hopefully play some good hockey and get a chance to be there.
Ryan, I'm going to get to AIC in a second, but you mentioned goaltenders, and how do you, when you have two goaltenders, you mentioned Grabko playing well in practice this week. DeBrouwer has been pretty solid for you. How do you make that decision when it gets to game day? Like, as a coach, what goes through your head in terms of that, this guy goes, this guy doesn't, maybe we give him one, maybe we give him two. I mean, you're in the playoffs, you probably want to ride the same guy the whole way. How do you make those tough decisions?
Yeah, there are tough decisions because, at the beginning of the year, we were playing two, and Nicky Grabko kind of took the job early in the year and had some big wins, against Ohio State and BC, and has been playing some really good hockey. And then Evan came in and he kind of took the job over there in mid-November and, went on a 5-6 game run, winning 5 straight. And, coming back from break, like I said, we were in that big time break and then the COVID break, and we kind of got into the shuffle a little bit of, back and forth. And that can be hard on a team, and that can be hard on those individuals too, kind of, going into the net thinking, geez, if I give up, 2 or 3, do I play again tomorrow night? And, that can be hard mentally for them too. And I know that. So obviously we had some trips there. We were out to Canisius and we had to head out to Niagara. So in those trips, more times than not, I do go into those weekends thinking it's a good opportunity to play 2 guys with the travel. And then we were trying to come out of those trips and see, who would maybe take the run into playoffs. And I think Evan edged out there, and he got the nod for the past weekend into Niagara. He played great, and it is his net heading into this weekend. And hopefully he continues to play the way that he's been. But it is tough. Goaltending is tough because we have full confidence in both those guys. And Nicky Grabko competes his absolute tail off every day. There's not a guy that works harder than him. He's a big time program guy, and we're fortunate to have him on our roster as well. But with that being said, both those guys, as all of our goaltenders do, support each other tremendously. They're great teammates, and they're always rooting each other on. And that's what makes it great. And then you're very fortunate when your guys are supporting each other.
How do you approach this series with the AIC? It's a team you split within the regular season. You won a game in overtime in the second game of the series, 5-0 loss in the first. But, how do you look at this team, and what do you have to do well to know that you can compete with the top team in the league?
Well, obviously, Eric's done a really good job at AIC, and they won the regular season championship, and congratulations to them. So they are a team that's extremely well coached. They don't beat themselves in the manner that they don't take a lot of penalties. They don't give you a lot of odd man rushes. They're very disciplined in their style of play. They're very defensive. So we know that we're going to have to go out and earn it. This is not a team that you're going to go play and they're going to hand you the game or make a lot of mistakes and hand it to you. So our approach heading into this weekend is going to be play 60 minutes, one shift at a time, and win every single battle and just do that one shift at a time. And we're going to have to go into that this weekend and outwork them. And that's the bottom line. Like I said, they're a well-coached team. They're a disciplined team. They are not going to hand you the game. But I think that we can build off of our past weekend, and that was the style of hockey that we played. And we need to head into this Friday night and play that same style.
Well, there's a trip to Utica on the line. The Atlantic Hockey Final Four will be decided this weekend, and obviously Bentley and American International. Should be a heck of a series, despite being 8-1 or 9-1. I think this might be one of the more entertaining series that's out there in terms of quarterfinal series this weekend. So Ryan Soderquist, best of luck. Short travel for you. It should be a tough trip, and we appreciate your time and good luck this weekend.
Thank you, Jim. I appreciate your time. Ed as well. Thank you very much.
That's Bentley's Ryan Soderquist. Jim, what's really interesting about this series with AIC this weekend is it's the third try they've had to try to play a playoff series. They were about to play in 2020 when everything shut down. They were supposed to play last year, but then Bentley got hit with COVID. Now they're taking each other on. And I think you're right. This does not feel like a first seed versus a ninth seed. This feels like a first seed and like a third or fourth seed playing in this contest and in this series.
Yeah, I think, Ed, we talked about this a little bit on Monday with Derek Schooley, that sometimes teams get out of position because of the fact that they lost a few games through the regular season. I think that's what happened with Bentley. They lost games that they probably shouldn't have at times during the regular season. You heard Ryan talk about the fact that they struggle to score goals at times. And when you go through that slump and then things turn around at some point, and maybe it's right at the same time as the postseason. It feels like right now for Bentley, it might be the same time that the postseason arrived. You don't know what's going to happen. This is a team that probably should be a third or a fourth place team, maybe even better in Atlantic hockey. And now they're a ninth place team. And now you have that team playing the best team in Atlantic hockey, AIC. And I think of those games being more challenging for AIC than maybe some of the games that they might face, a week later in the Final Four in Utica. I mean, I think that if AIC can survive this, they might be the most battle-tested team. But I also look at Bentley and saying that they could easily, in a 2 out of 3 series, be the better team over 2 out of 3 nights.
And when you talk 2 out of 3 nights, you look at the pattern of AIC this season. The Yellow Jackets have tended to have series where they blow out a team in one game and it's a close game in the next game. If you're talking 3 and you split the first 2, then it comes down to anybody in the next one. But I want to hit on one thing that I observed on the weekend watching the Bentley Niagara series. And I hesitated to ask Ryan Soderquist about this because I didn't want to dwell too much on last weekend. But late in that contest, probably midway or past the midway point of the third period, Bentley had a goal disallowed. Their player went in on the netminder, had some help. There was a hand on his back all the way, took out the netminder, maybe even after the puck was past the goalie. The officials looked at it and in their judgment, and they had all the video angles, waved off the goal. Ryan was irate on the bench. And from that point on in the game, the team seemed to have a little bit of an edge or a little bit of anger that they took through regulation and took into overtime. And it seemed to keep that momentum and that attitude and that edginess for Saturday, where they seemed to be the much better team. Maybe a moment like that is something to turn things around for a team and maybe bring people together. Certainly fired up the coach.
I certainly don't know if that's long-term, but in the short term, it did. And you're right, Ed. That I think that Ryan was able to take that as a them versus we attitude and turn it into we got something taken away from us. We should be already done this night. We should have won this game, but instead we're heading to overtime. And then they found a way to win. And I think that those are the moments that sometimes as a coaching staff, they're difficult to survive. Most good coaches, and I'm sure that Ryan, despite the fact that he was upset, as you're going through that video review, most good coaches say to their players, listen, assume this is going against us. And I'm sure that's exactly the way that Bentley coached. Now, don't expect Ryan to not react once that call goes against him, but it did seem that his team did galvanize a little bit. And I thought in the overtime, they were by far the better team. They found a way to score a goal. And then after that, I thought that, the series became theirs. I thought that they kind of controlled things from that moment on. And sometimes small moments can galvanize a team. I do think that weekend to weekend, I don't know if that translates, but I think that, you never know. Small moments can really make teams come together.
Well, and as we look at the rest of the quarterfinal matchups in the league, and I think we'll end with some thoughts on this. So you've got AIC and Bentley, which we've talked about. Let's look at the other matchups. Air Force is at Army. could you ask for a better matchup than that? The two service academies who have a great history. Last time they had a 3-game series at Army, it was Air Force who came away with a win. You've got Mercyhurst going to Canisius. They are longtime rivals, preceding Atlantic Hockey, preceding the MAC, and Mercyhurst took the home-and-home series to end the season against them. And then you've got RIT and Sacred Heart. The last two series these teams had, the visiting team won the series in 3 games after some back and forth the other way. So it should be an interesting weekend. And I think for Commissioner Bob DiGregorio and his staff, they've got to be elated at the matchups they've got.
Well, I'll start with the service academies because I think the two of them will play absolutely the most physical series you will ever see played in a playoff in Atlantic Hockey. I mean, that's just the way that these two teams play. But at the end of the weekend, there will be a lot of respect. And that's the most important part of the service academies getting together. But that will be a hard-fought series. I would not want to be the 4 officials that will be assigned to that series in West Point. In terms of the bridge rivalry, Mercyhurst and Canisius, I know it's not Canisius and Niagara, but still, I think I go back to the days of like the MAC and the CHA, and Mercyhurst Canisius was truly back then. That was a little rivalry. I mean, and to renew that will be fun. And then, you mentioned RIT and Sacred Heart, and I don't know as much as you do, Ed, about those two schools. And I know they've played each other in playoffs, which is crazy to play for, I think, what you said, the 3rd time. It's hard to align at any time for a playoff series. So to do so multiple times is something that I think creates a little bit of an internal rivalry. So I think that those games should be great. I do believe that there's talent on both sides there too. And that's one of the tough things, is knowing that both teams have a lot of talent. And I think that either team, if they survive, can win this tournament. But it's one of those things that, can you survive a weekend in the quarterfinals? We're going to see that across college hockey this weekend. How many really good teams are going to be knocked out this weekend? Teams that you could sit there and say, hey, they could go to the NCAA tournament and not just, win a game, but be competitive, maybe get to a Frozen Four, and they might be done this weekend, because that's just where they sit in the overall pairwise, the overall, spectrum of college hockey.
Well, we're going to wrap things there. This podcast has been sponsored by DCU, Digital Federal Credit Union. What will DCU mean to you? Find out today by visiting dcu.org. Membership required. For Jim Connelly, I'm Ed Trefzger, and we'll catch you next time.
This has been the USCHO Spotlight, a production of U.S. College Hockey Online. Visit uscho.com/podcasts to listen or subscribe.